This Friday, almost every nation in the world, except for the United States, turned their attention towards Brazil and the World Cup. Soccer, or football as everybody else calls it, is the #1 watched sport in all the world. So during the next 30 days, games will be played throughout the country of Brazil at different stadiums, giving the country an opportunity to show itself off. Brazil's government hopes that this will burnish the country's reputation as an emerging nation, that it will attract business and garnish it political clout. The home team, Brazil, is highly favored to win the whole World Cup, hopefully giving the people of that nation something else to celebrate. But there is one area where Brazil doesn't have to wait to be #1 in the world, and that's in protecting the rainforests. Brazil used to clear 8,000 square miles of rainforest per year, the size of the state of Massachusetts. But since 2005, the rate of deforestation has dropped 80%, 80, to about 2,000 square miles. This in turn has reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by 70%, the most of any nation in the world. Dan Nepstead, the executive director and founder of Earth Innovation Institute, says that several factors help explain Brazil's success. They include accords with the soybean farmers and cattle ranchers, limiting the amount of land they will clear. The national government implemented a blacklist of counties where there is more than 40 square miles of rainforest cleared in a year. If a county ends up on that list, all the farmers within that county are taken out of eligibility for the $50 billion in farm credit that is offered each year. And those who violate the limits are sought out and prosecuted, as well as pressure building from international companies doing business there due to consumer boycotts and campaigns. This has not been without its share of controversy. Opponents argue it will cost jobs and risk increasing the already rampant poverty there. But the result has been a radical reduction in the loss of the rainforests. The goal of net zero loss of rainforest in Brazil is seen as attainable by 2017, in a little over 2 years. And their actions have had a worldwide effect, reducing deforestation as a source of greenhouse gases from 17% to 10%. Now, such preservation efforts aren't unfamiliar to many on Sanibel. 70% of the island's area is now classified as a nature preserve. And many of the people involved in preserving and continuing to advocate for Sanibel's environment are from this congregation. The first 38 members of this church saw the care of the island as part of its calling and a reason for being a church. This led to a rather unique statement that is in our church covenant. It is our purpose to protect in every way we can the land that God gave us here on Sanibel, and to foster protection of all birds, animals, and plant life, as well as people on this fragile barrier island. This phrase jumps out at people. I can tell you it's not a common one in church covenants. It was one of the factors that sparked the interest of both Pastor John and myself when you were searching to fill our positions. It's one of the reasons that our church is built so far back on this lot, and that the trees were not cut and cleared for the parking lot. And it continues to be one of the factors that is discussed when improvements are considered and other actions by the congregation are undertaken. Even when the decisions that are made aren't as environmentally friendly as some would like, the issue is at least seriously given important consideration here, which doesn't happen in most churches. This has all been done without sacrificing a commitment to mission and other outreach efforts that help people. But while great progress has been made in places such as Sanibel and Brazil, too many parts of our nation and our world are still seeing land stripped of all its resources. Too many areas are still being contaminated to the point that human, plant, or animal life can't survive or thrive. The melting of the polar ice caps is affecting our weather, and if the projections are correct, they will change sea levels throughout the world over the next 100 years, threatening coastal communities around the world. If we haven't already as a congregation, perhaps it's time to expand our understanding of our covenantal charge from protecting this fragile barrier island to protecting this fragile earth. Now, I realize that in a real way, I am preaching to the choir here. Not only do environmental concerns show up in your church covenant, but many of you have and continue to take part in environmental groups on the island, even providing leadership. But perhaps it's time for us as a church to make even clearer that the environment's care, conservation, and repair aren't just a good idea, but are integral parts of our faith life. It isn't only the seriousness of these problems and the impact that it has on other humans that merits our attention and action as people of faith. It's also about our relationship with God. The poetic imagery of Genesis 1 tells us that there is more to the environment and nature than what human beings can extract from its resources or use for its pleasure. Creation is depicted as expanding and taking shape each day from God's own words. Here, creation is depicted as coming from the deepest part of God, originating within from where breath is exhaled and then formed into words that give life to everything. Day and night, stars and earth, animals, plants, human beings, all receive the spark of life from God's words. So here the poetry reminds us that the world really is not ours. We did not create it. We certainly don't control it. And certainly don't own it, despite what your home deed may say. Earth is but one part of a larger universe, created and lived in by God. So the author of Genesis imaginatively describes the universe as complex and interconnected. Human beings only one part lovingly created by God. It is the totality of creation itself, not just human beings, that God declares good, very good. God is portrayed as the life-giving force that changes and forms and creates all life from the beginning of time to today. Within this portrait of creation, we are given a special role to be God's agents. We are entrusted with this world, given dominion over all of creation. And for too long, human beings have interpreted that statement as conveying ownership and permission to do what we want. We act sometimes as if we believe that God created the universe, handed us the keys, and said, "It's all yours now, kids," and has gone to retire off some island in Sanibel in heaven, leaving us as the owners and CEOs of the earth and beyond. But our faith reminds us that there is a different story. God not only cares about us, but is still active creating and redeeming all. We often focus this work of God as solely involving human beings. But it's all creation that God sees as good, not just us. Our dominion over creation, our rule is to reflect the way of the one who rules over us. It is to reflect this through a mutual relationship, through care, vulnerability, and dependence, not one that seeks to dominate to get everything it can from the other. We are to seek to serve in love, even creation, as Jesus sought to serve us. The quest to find solutions will not be easy or simple. The vastness and the complexity of the damage already done will demand a complex, multifaceted solution, as reflected by the efforts in the Brazilian rainforest. And today, leading environmentalists and activists and scientists are focusing on the impact on the environment by the complete life cycle of an item, not only if it biodegrades. It focuses on what happens to it from harvesting of materials through its disposal and how it affects these fragile ecosystems. So answers to such questions as paper or plastic become less obvious, often depending on where one is located, what environmental effects are being looked at, and even the method of disposal. There isn't a one-size-fits-all solution any more than there is one cause of the damage. At times, we will disagree about what needs to be done. And we will fail at times and hopefully learn from our mistakes. But as agents of God, entrusted with both the use and the care of this planet, we are called to foster the care of this fragile planet and all that lives upon it and depends upon it. The good news is that as a congregation, we already have a good start on those efforts. So as God's agents, may we continue to lead in this for the sake not only of the island, but for the whole planet. May we realize these efforts as another piece of our vibrant, living relationship with God and each other. Amen.